Good morning. I'm a Southerner now. You're supposed to return that, right? So good to see you all this morning. I see so many friends here. I'm Johnny Taylor, President and CEO of SHRM. I think many of you know me. We've interacted, I hope, and if we haven't, we should. The world's largest HR association, and I'm so honored to be here not only with my SHRM hat on, but with my guild hat on. This is a really, really important morning for us. We're going to spend some time talking about, particularly in this session, the word opportunity. We're going to talk about opportunity a lot. And what I've found and learned in business is that any concepts don't work unless they ultimately provide mutual benefit. So we're going to talk about opportunity from the perspective of you all as employers, from your perspective, but also opportunity from the perspective of the employee. It is critical that this not be just a one-way deal, that what's in it for the employers, how can we further exploit our talent, but ultimately what will they be able to get from it as well. So a lot of the conversation this morning will be about that opportunity word. And we have the opportunity to learn from, speaking of opportunity, leaders of some of the nation's leading employers about how building comprehensive skilling and career pathways programs have helped their organization, how that has helped their organizations reimagine internal mobility, attraction and retention of really strong employees, and then creating robust talent pipelines. So that's the subject for the day. Professor Taylor has spoken, and now we're going to I get the opportunity to introduce folks, and I'm going to get these names right, which is always a challenge. Alan, let me try it. Cullenhay.
Cullenhay, yep.
I did these as well as I could, right?
Well
We're in
done.
the back. The Chief People Officer for Core Operations at Bon Secours Mercy Health. Alan leads HR strategy for BSMH's health delivery operations across the ministry, with a focus on workforce strategy to deliver results in talent acquisition, associate retention, workforce planning, and strategic HR solutions. Alan is also leading innovative strategies to improve associate experience, a really big word now, and to simplify service delivery for key initiatives. Before that, you served as Chief People Officer, right, for Ensemble Health Partners, a leading revenue cycle management organization, along with roles at Catholic Health Initiatives and Mercer. Mm-hmm. Welcome. Please join me. Welcome.
Thanks, man.
And Tanya Cornelius, or let me be appropriate, Dr. Tanya Cornelius is the Senior Vice President, Learning and Talent Solutions for the Walt Disney Company, where she serves as an integral member of the Enterprise Human Resources Leadership Team. Dr. Cornelius is responsible for learning, leadership development, talent and succession management, performance management, and career development. Whew, that's a lot, right? Dr. Cornelius joined the Walt Disney Company in 2009, serving for nearly 13 years at ESPN prior to moving into her current role. At ESPN, she led learning, talent management, organization development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and wellness. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cornelius. And last but certainly not least, sitting to my left, right, is Christopher Schreirock. I got that right?
Well done.
All right, thank you. Serves as Sam's Club's Senior Vice President and Chief People Officer. In that role, Christopher oversees all aspects of human resources for Sam's Club and is responsible for attracting, developing, of course, rewarding, and retaining talent, as well as building a diverse and inclusive organization. Prior to Sam's Club, Christopher spent nearly 14 years at PepsiCo. I'm a big Pepsi guy, I gotta admit, and a variety of global HR leadership roles. So please join me in inviting Christopher to our stage. All righty, so in the back, Alan was like, okay, good luck. I said, I got the easy job. I get to read my questions. You all have to work this morning. All right, so I'm gonna first turn, I think, to Christopher. Did I get it right? Tanya? I get to pick, right? All right, Tanya, ladies first. What does a culture of opportunity mean for your organization, and why is it so important?
Yeah, so culture of opportunity for us, I saw the video at the very beginning as we opened this session this morning about where talent intersects or meets opportunity. And that's what Disney Aspire is all about. As you saw, we are celebrating 5 years with Disney Aspire. We have over 14,000 of our 90,000 employees that are enrolled in Disney Aspire. And you talk about opportunity. Not only have we, with those 14,000, I just learned this morning from my team that more than 26,000 have actually gone through that program. We have about 14,000 that are currently enrolled. And what we tried to do at the inception of Disney Aspire was truly create opportunity. We had an opportunity to invest back into our hourly population. I've said 90,000 of Disney's little over 200,000 employees are our hourly cast members and employees. And so investing in that population is a win for our company. And we wanted to make Disney Aspire barrier-free, tuition-free program that enabled our 90,000 employees across the U.S. to achieve their educational goals. And when I say barrier-free opportunity, some of the things that we did to create that opportunity was try to remove what those barriers are. So tuition-free, we know that cost is a huge barrier to anyone who is trying to go back to school to finish their educational goals. But we also looked at, in traditional programs, how could we remove some of those barriers? One, an employee, our hourly employees only have to be with the company 90 days to be eligible to enroll in Disney Aspire. They can elect to pursue programs and degrees in any educational interests that they have, so it does not have to be in the line of work that they are currently pursuing, which traditional tuition reimbursement, those stipulations are usually there, and there is no requirement for retention beyond completing their degree. So sometimes there's also this stipulation that if the company has invested in your education, you must remain with that company a year or 2 or 5 years. There's none of those stipulations. It's simply what was our desire to meet our employees where they are, and understanding that if we created opportunity for them, they were more than ready. And not only is it a win for our company and a win for the individuals themselves, but we know the domino effect that education has in communities. So for us, our strategy is threefold. How do we support our employees in their educational goals and their career aspirations? How do we uplift the communities that we operate in and our employees live and work in? But also then as a company, we attract and engage and develop this great diverse talent that we have in our Disney Aspire program. And so we've seen that. We've seen the reputational effect of Disney Aspire. 1 in 4 of our hourly applicants cite that it is Disney Aspire that drew them to apply to the Walt Disney Company. So huge effect there in creating opportunity and actually maximizing. And I feel like in 5 years, we're really just getting started.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Right? So you said something that was really interesting, especially for those of us who've been at this work for a while. You said barrier-free, but if you think about times past, those of us who have done this realize that you said within 90 days, you're in. It used to be, if you back in the day, you'd have to be with a company 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You had to be a hypo. So number one, you removed that barrier. Secondly, you could study whatever you wanted, which is an interesting design, right? For those of us in the room, you're like, do I want the person who wants to go study music? And maybe at Disney you have an opportunity for them, but not if they're in my accounting department. Like, why am I doing that? And then finally, they don't have to stay with you. This is not the old Army model where I pay for your degree and then you have to remain with me for 3 or 4 years. Tell me how'd you sell that even, like internally, because that's a
Well,
big deal. This is expensive, right?
I mean, the thing that I love most about Disney Aspire, it didn't take a lot of selling, right?
That's
Our senior most leadership embraced Disney Aspire from day one. And, not only is it great for us from an economical standpoint, and I'll get to that, but just, again, the reputational uplift and cultural uplift, culture of opportunity, all of these things. But the vast number of careers that exist within the Walt Disney Company, everything from a zoologist to an accountant or whatever. So it's all there within the Walt Disney Company. And this is why we believe that employees can study such a vast array of programs, whatever they're interested in. And 9 times out of 10, there is a career path for them to go into at the Walt Disney Company. So it's been hugely effective. And you talked about retention. Although there are no parameters or retention, retention paperwork they have to sign, the majority of our Disney Aspire participants, once they graduate, they stay with the company. We have had over 3,800 graduates and 3,100 promotions, and many of them have been promoted now into salaried positions. So it is doing exactly what the employee had hoped for, but also what we as a company had hoped for. We are growing careers and helping put dreams within reach at the Walt Disney Company through Disney Aspire.
That's right.
Yeah.
As I said, it's counterintuitive, right, that you would do this and make it available, because the idea is I'm going to make this investment and educate for someone else's workforce. Fascinating to hear that. Turning to you, Christopher, to that point. Ultimately, even if you have a culture, an organization that values this and wants to do right by its people, even if those people move on to other organizations, it does have to have a business impact. You've got to be able to quantify, like, did this work? Are we getting a sufficient return? Reputation matters, but also in retention and succession and all of that. Where is your company doing well, Christopher, in creating this culture of opportunity? Any stats or specific accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Yeah, so maybe I'd start on that business aspect and just give a little bit of context
Please.
there, and then talk about some of the opportunity piece. So for Sam's Club, for those of you that may not be as familiar, it's a membership warehouse club, which basically means that people pay for the privilege to shop with us. It also that means for us, we've got to make sure that we've got a high quality, curated assortment, best price, and letting people kind of shop when and where and how they want from a convenience point of view. In other words, kind of the business case for us as for anything is, do we have members that are happy? And if you want members that are happy, that really means that you need an associate base that is engaged and tenured with the company. And if you want an associate base that's engaged and tenured with the company, we've got to focus on a few basic things. We've got to focus on making sure that we're paying a strong wage. We've got to make sure that people have tools and resources to be able to do their job. We've got to make sure that they're working for a good manager. And we've got to make sure that we're providing opportunity for the associates we have. So we've got about 95,000 associates that are hourly kind of working inside of clubs and supply chain. And when it comes to that opportunity piece, we kind of look at that really in 3 fundamental ways. So the first way is, are we bringing people into the company from kind of diverse and different talent pools and sources? The second is, are we giving them training? Are we giving them development in the jobs they have today? Because nobody ever grew in a company and took a bigger job and got promoted by being below average in the job that they're in. And then the third piece, which is links exactly to what Tanya said and then are we giving them the skills they're going to need for roles in the future? So for us, that might be through programs like Manager in Training, which helps get people from hourly roles to salaried positions, or through our Live Better You program, which is where we partner with a lot of you in the audience and Guild in terms of cost-free college and continuing education. I think I spend a fair amount of my time kind of out out in clubs. And there was a woman I ran across in Minnesota a month or two ago named Diana. And Diana's a really good example of this opportunity piece. So she was a high school intern that we hired 3 years ago. So she was doing entry greeting and exit greeting and working the register in the clubs. She did a great job over that 10 weeks, and we turned her into a full-time associate. We then expanded her role. We made her a team lead for across the entirety of the front end, and we spent a lot of effort and energy with her in terms of helping to understand how you identify, how you develop, how you manage talent, what good member service looks like. So making her really successful in that role today. And as of 2 months ago, she's the first high school intern we had that's been promoted into a salaried management role. So she went from being an 18-year-old intern for us to making $65,000 a year. She's now, we'll give a hand for that. She's enrolled in LBU, kind of pursuing a business administration degree to help kind of move her further along. So I think for us, it's where all of these things start to converge of you've got to know what your business case is. You've got to know what you want in your associates and how you support them. So when you look at some of those statistics, I mean, we've seen in the last 4 years a 200% increase in promotions from hourly to salaried roles. We've seen a 75% reduction in the time it takes for us to fill one of the club manager jobs that we have. Engagement is at an all-time high. Productivity is at an all-time high. And most importantly, our member satisfaction with our associates is also at an all-time high. So we feel really proud about kind of how all of that works and pulls in the same direction.
Wow. Let's give a shout out for that. That was amazing. So before I go to Alan, let me just ask you, did you ever have, because Tanya told us the organization embraced it right away. Did you have to do a big sell within your organization? And to the extent you did, talk to me.
I don't think there was a big sell to the organization, especially when it came to some of the work with Guild and Live Better You. And there's a few folks in the audience, Lorraine and Jen and Heather, that have really kind of pulled that together for us. I think the thing that for us we kind of continue to come back to is we're trying to drive this intersection between how we provide people opportunity, again, for today and for tomorrow. How we make those communities that we operate in stronger. So you think about Sam's Club, we have 600 clubs. That's 600 different communities that we're a part of. And then finally, how does that intersect with kind of this other culture we're trying to create of one where everyone has this feeling that they can actually belong with us. So when you make it about more than just, can we get a free college degree for people that are interested in it, and you talk about impact in communities, you talk about impact in career and opportunities, and you talk about kind of this cultural element of belonging, it becomes a pretty straightforward narrative that everybody gets on board with pretty quickly.
I love that. I love that. I love that. All righty, Alan. Hot spot. Hot spot. All righty. So we've gone through the culture of opportunity and how you built that at Disney into the organization. Sam's Club is saying this is how it happens. But how do you balance when we're in these HR roles, senior HR leadership roles? There's a long-term need and then the short-term needs, especially 2 years ago when we were in the middle of the Great Resignation and turnover and all of our jobs are open. We had 10 million, looks like we're back at 10 million open jobs in America. So the problem hasn't gone away. We're challenged with supplying the business what it needs today, focusing on bringing people in. And now you're asking me to invest in promoting those people and developing them. Like, this is not the focus. I could see the response being from our leaders. Get really focused on having, especially in healthcare, I need nurses in spot right now, having them pursue a director of nursing or a doctorate in nursing, et cetera. Let that come. But right now, let's solve for our crisis, our talent shortage. How do you balance that all out?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's an operational imperative, right? I mean, we have over 1 million patient encounters a year. Staffing our facilities is a matter of life and death,
That's
right?
literally.
So that is the critical short-term need. But from our perspective, in the middle of pandemic, our vacancy, our turnover had exploded. I think last year we spent 4 times more in contract labor than we did just 2 years before. Our operating income just tanked. We're losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So being able to just pause and think about the long term, it's challenging in that environment. But what I would say is that the Guild opportunity, which is really driven through a really basic supply versus demand modeling and calculus, in our mind, we just didn't have enough supply. So it became very easy for us in the midst of these huge challenges to think about the long term through our guild partnership. And what ended up being really a long-term view ended up actually helping us in the short term in many ways. We've since seen our turnover plummet. Our vacancy has reduced about 45% since the heart of the pandemic. The folks who are participating in Guild, we have about 4,500 learners, are 3.1 times less likely to leave our ministry. We've seen an ROI of 2 to 1, and this is like, our finance team cannot challenge this one. I mean, we went super conservative with it. Mic drop moment for the team. And 56% of our hires cited our education benefit, our partnership with Guild, as a critical factor in them joining our ministry. And so we've had record hiring. We've really done a lot to stabilize the workforce. So in many ways, that long-term focus, that Guild scratched, that itch, helped us in the short term. So it was really a fantastic situation for our organization. So.
Got to be proud of that, right?
Yeah, and the team over there, by the way, is driving most of that.
Let's
so.
hear it, team. Okay, so question for you, and this is really at the core of all of us who commit our lives to this profession, human resources, and whether you're in talent development, talent acquisition, management, whatever you're doing, we're still all in the human resources business, one HR. Guild has shared the idea that talking about opportunity can't be done without acknowledging a change. I mean, a significant change in how we view existing talent. Too often, we're really busy trying to make ourselves attractive and culturally, connecting with people outside of the organization, but we don't treat or think about our existing talent, internal talent, the same way. And then we have to also say, how do employees see themselves? The young woman that you described, if she saw herself as an 18-year-old who didn't go to college, and we've all known, if I have a 13-year-old daughter, you go to a class, and they're constantly convincing every kid to go to college right there out of school, and if not, you're a loser. No one ever at a student convening said, stand up if you're not going to college, right? So a lot of this is about self-esteem, how they come into the workplace thinking about themselves. What do you think are the right ways for us to go about changing that? This whole shift on the internal talent, from our perspective, how we see internal talent, but also how the internal talent see themselves. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'll start. You're absolutely right. So not only is Disney Aspire an attractor, right, of great diverse talent, but it is also the way in which we are developing and retaining that talent and growing them. So many of our hourly employees start in one place, and they're not sure what they want to do or what is even available to them. And getting into the Disney Aspire program and moving through that, it's like doors open for them, and they're able to see themselves, and they're able to see the vast opportunities that are available at the Walt Disney Company. But the thing I love about Disney Aspire also is the halo effect that it has on the rest of our talent population. Certainly, all of us are tremendously proud of the success of Disney Aspire, but it opens the minds and opportunities for all employees. That is the domino effect of a program like this. But it's also given us, my team, many of whom I'll give a shout out as well, because my team is out there that leads this program.
We're given Disney us people. Come on, we got to shout it out for the Disney folks in the room.
It's given us a way to look at, career development and internal mobility, and not just looking at the candidate experience for external talent, but looking at the experience of our employees inside the company. So much so that we are in the process of developing a true internal mobility function that bridges from talent acquisition to talent management to career development, so that we're all working together with business leaders to realize that opportunity.
You know, it's interesting. SHRM just conducted some research in our State of the Workplace study and found that there's an empathy, what do they call it, an empathy deficit in our country. And what we're hearing from the workers, especially Generation Z, 83% of them say, I would leave the job that I have where I'm totally, totally happy to go to another place where the leaders are more empathetic. And it's really interesting because empathy and sympathy, we know they conflate the use of them. They're really talking about true empathy. Creating this kind of a culture where you see someone and you say, what can they become, not what they are, is so compelling. That is actually attractive to people that, people who are considering coming to work with you. So I love that idea. This story, if you could go back, Christopher, one of the stories that you gave, but give us more. I mean, talk about this.
Yeah, so I get the chance, like I said, to be in a lot of clubs, and I've had the chance to spend some time in a couple of the buildings we have in Austin. And I came across this guy that's one of our club managers here. This guy named Budima. So Budima started with us in College Station, Texas. He was working in the cafe. And we could see, because when our associates come in, we put them through kind of some simple assessments in terms of, situational judgment and preferences and these kinds of things. So we knew that there was something there. But his heart wasn't really in it. And there was a manager at this club in College Station named John who'd gone up to Budima and basically said, what's going on? And he just said, I just don't like working in the cafe. I don't like working here. I'd rather move to another part of the club, which I'll come back to. I think this element that John had, and it goes a bit to this empathy point of we work with managers and basically help them to ask and then associates to answer just 3 really simple questions. The first is just, where are you now? Which is basically code for what experiences do you have, what credentials do you have, what have you actually done? The second question is, where do you want to go? Which is basically code for what's your aspiration? What engages you? What gives you energy? And then the third question is, how can you get there, right? So this was basically the conversation that John had with Budima. So Budima said, I'd like to work in the bakery. So we moved him back, and he spent the next 12 months decorating cakes for us. John went back and said, hey, if your aspiration is really to be a salaried manager here, you're going to have to move to other different parts of the club. So we moved him to the front end. We moved him to the fresh department. We moved him to a co-manager job that we had in Houston. And now Budima is 24 years old. He's running our second largest club that we have in Austin. And the one of my favorite parts of the story when I talked to him was he got to the end and he said, I just had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a guy that was, there's this shift that starts at 4 a.m. He was constantly late to it. I didn't want to exit him, so I just asked, again, what's going on? What do you want to do? What gives you energy? And he said, I really have a passion for cars. And Budima said, well, we have a tire and battery center, and we may have a place for you there, right? So it's this great component of how you work to pay that forward.
I love that. I love that story. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, career mobility is at the heart of our mission in many ways. We are a faith-based health system, non-for-profit, give away about $2 million in free care every single day. And so our mission of extending health and well-being to our communities really at the core is about a mobility story in many ways. I talked about the financial challenges we've had as an organization the last few years. But another thing that's a big challenge for us is our workforce is not really as representative of our communities as we need it to be. We are a safety net facility in most of the cities that we operate in. And just like a lot of other health systems here, there's huge opportunity in healthcare. We have 14,000 plus nurses that are making, now, close to $100,000 a year, every single one of them. Some making much more than that as well. So you think about in every community, no matter how depressed or how thriving, healthcare is at the core, and it's such a huge part of the economy, the local economy, and the local dignity of that community. And so mobility has become the epicenter of all of our human capability plan, our HR strategy. So our 5-year strategy really focuses on 4 key pillars. One is pipeline of talent. 2 is sustainable cost of labor. 3 is employer of choice, and 4 is realized equality. So those 4 pillars, which we are now really focused on, mobility checks every single one of those boxes, like easily. And what we've done to build our program is to have the face of our workforce mirror that of our community. So, right now, of our 4,500 learners, we're almost 1.5 times more diverse in that population than in our regular population. What we're doing with our school partners as well is really embarking on inviting more BIPOC into that pipeline. And we truly foresee in the next 5 years, every corner of our organization, our executives, very diverse, our frontline staff, very diverse. We have a bit of an hourglass in that our clinical frontline staff, it's just not there. And so this is going to be a huge impact for all of our communities that we serve, and really representing the face of that community. So it's exciting.
And what I love is that this is not just all of you, in your own way mentioned, this isn't just the culture within the 4 walls, if you will, of your business. This is how you're impacting communities in each of the clubs, each of your locations, each of the hospitals. This is very cool. So I'm going to ask you all to kind of wrap with a personal story. Why does this matter? Why does this work really matter to you? And I'm going to privilege of telling you why it's so important to me when given the opportunity to join the Guild Board. So my parents, I'm from Fort Lauderdale, any Floridians in the room, born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, and my parents divorced when I was 7. My mother had been a homemaker. So right out of high school, parents married very soon, had 3 lovely children, and at least the first one was. But anyway, so divorces happen, right? So my mother is now left with having to provide for 3 children. And so she went to become a nursing assistant, a CNA, because you could do that pretty quickly, speaking of. But she was incredibly frustrated because she was very talented. She chose not to go to school. It wasn't that she dropped or stopped out of school. She chose not to because she was going to be a homemaker and provide for her family. And so here we are, but she wanted to do more than being a CNA. So if you know this sort of world, there's an LPN and there's an RN, and she had all of these aspirations but could not see a way to go back to continue her education because it required money up front, and you had to have a certain grade back in the day. So it wasn't just enough to put, though. You could not get the reimbursement if you didn't finish the course, and if you didn't finish it with a B or better, or if you did a C, you got 50% versus 70. You know how complicated we made all of this stuff in the past. So growing up, nosy kid that I am, I kept hearing her be very, very frustrated by it. There was no guild. There was nothing like that. It was simply if you couldn't figure out how to pay for it, then that means you weren't deserving of the pursuit of a college degree or career mobility. And I remembered as a little boy it really bothering me. I felt like my mom was being mistreated, and obviously we were being directly impacted by her ability not to be able to earn a better living, so she was trapped. And I remembered her talking about, literally, I'd overhear, she wasn't talking to 8-year-olds about this, but I'd hear her say, "I feel trapped." And so that's why this work is so personal to me, because ultimately a family member became her guild, gave us the money so that she could go and pursue education. Today, my mom completed her BSN and and became a director of nursing and a hospice nurse, and provided education for her 3 kids, all of whom are college graduates. But it started because there was essentially a guild in a person, right? And so how do you do this at scale? I think you say all of scaling serendipity, right? I see, that's right. It's a phrase. How do you ensure that there are not fellow Americans, those of us who are sitting there with these huge talent, but the barrier that's put in place is they cannot pursue the educational opportunity because simply they don't have the money to do it. They can't access the educational systems to do better for themselves and their families. So that's why it's personal to me. Alan, why is it so personal to you?
Again, I think it's the heart of our organization. There's dignity in work, right? And just trying to find that spark, that opportunity to offer someone a chance at a fulfilling career like your mom, Johnny. I think that's a really incredible story, and I think we're seeing that play out hundreds and hundreds of times within our organization. And so to be able to go to an associate population and offer that enablement so that they can take the their own imperative to drive towards that opportunity, it's just extremely fulfilling for all of us within our HR team within Bon Secours Mercy Health. So,
Christopher?
So for me, I mean, I spent the first 7 years of my working life, probably like many of you, in a variety of all kinds of different hourly roles. So everything from driving trucks to buses to bartending to serving in restaurants, etc. And not only was that a really formative experience for me in terms of kind of understanding value of work and effect, but equally really formative in terms of a lot of the folks that I had the opportunity to work with. And there were a lot of those people that worked really hard. And some of them just liked the jobs that they had, and they wanted to do a good job in that, and that was great. And there were others that kind of wanted to do something more, but couldn't really find or identify what that path and what that piece was. And I was a huge beneficiary. I was a kid from Nowheresville, Ohio, but I had the opportunity to go to a real 4-year school. And I saw the opportunity that unlocked, and I think even about kind of the job I'm in today, and a lot of the relevance of that degree is dissipated. But what I think is still relevant is there's a lot of skills that you pick up, right? So I think about critical thinking. I think about creativity. I think about being able to collaborate. There's a lot of things that, not just education, but that we really need in a workforce today. And for me, there is a path, and that's kind of been one of my personal missions, is how do you help people find that path that they want to be on, and then how do you encourage them and help you kind of stay on that path for themselves?
Doc, bring us home.
Yeah, so fellow Floridian, grew up in Central Florida and got my undergraduate degree from the University of Florida.
Okay.
And
you were doing well until you started down that
my
path.
son played football at Miami.
So.
I have to say, my son played football at Miami, so
Okay,
he's
all right.
UM is in the house also. So my first job out of college was teaching, and I taught in the inner city of Miami, Florida. And I didn't quite know what I was doing. I'll try to abbreviate the story a lot, but I was teaching this group of really children of immigrants, African American, Cuban descent, Haitian descent, Dominican Republic, all of this. So this population of students in the inner city of Miami. So not only were their parents poor, but some of them were new to the country. And I remember one day teaching. I got my degree in broadcast media, but I ended up teaching my first year. And, I thought, I'll just teach for a year and decide what I really want to do. And just fate had it that I was in that classroom, and I was their teacher. And I remember one day, whether it was a fire alarm or whatever, that we came back into the classroom, and I remember going around the room, because we didn't have much time. So I just remember going around the classroom and asking these 11, 12-year-olds, what did they want to do? Or what did they want to be when they grew up? And of course, the guys, the young boys, wanted to be firefighters or police officers or professional athletes, and the girls wanted to be, dancers, or they wanted to own their own beauty salons and so forth. And then I get to the last student, and her name is Anaris, and I wish I could find Anaris today, because she has no idea how she ignited in me, but I can still see her face. And I ask Anaris, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And she almost whispers it to me. She says, I want to be a doctor. And she whispered it to me as though that was so incredulous, that being in this inner city, dilapidated classroom, a child of an immigrant, how that dream was so big for her. And a wave of compassion and empathy came over me, and I knew from that day, I didn't know what I would do with my career, but I knew that moment that whatever I did, I wanted to be involved in helping people, one, to believe in themselves, and two, to help them achieve their goals and their dreams for their lives. And from that day forward, that is how I really navigated my career, being in roles that allowed me to do that. So a year and a half ago, when I got to step into this role that I'm in today and work with the incredible team that I have at the Walt Disney Company to help our hourly population do that very same thing, to believe in themselves, to see the opportunity that is in front of them, and to help them put their dreams within reach. I feel like my career came full circle in helping the employees at the Walt Disney Company do just what those employees, those students wanted to do almost 30 some odd years ago. And so, yeah, that's what inspires me every day to get up.
That's a great story. If we were home and I were being competitive, I'd say, not bad for a gator, but that's fine. No, seriously, this has been really phenomenal. I really appreciate you all, and I hope you all do, sharing your personal stories, but more importantly, the success that you're having within your organizations. Because as I said at the outset, this is very much, it has to be mutually beneficial. The concept that it is good for businesses, it's good for our employers, but at the same time, it's really good for the individuals. We are impacting people's, and I think back to my life, it wasn't just about the opportunity you were making for my mother, it was for her children and then her grandchildren, et cetera. So this is really important work, and I want to thank each of you for giving us time this morning, and thank you all for listening. Appreciate you. Thank you.